How we doing, folks? Your host Moose here on the Pitt Panthers Football Network. Season 2 is underway, and we are back with a fresh episode as we are going to get into a season preview for your Pitt Panthers. It's going to be an additional supplement to our season preview as we've already gone over the new recruits that we've brought in. We've already looked at our schedule for next season. We've already looked at our recruiting board for next season. Now we're going to look at the players that are going to make up our team this year. We're going to go through the players that we're going to redshirt this year. We're going to go through our depth chart for this season, which has had some big changes based on the stuff that I told you about in our little teaser episode previously. So if you haven't watched it to know what I'm about to go into, go back and watch it. Otherwise, get ready for this episode. So the first thing, the biggest thing we talked about is a couple of the changes that you guys kind of helped implement and helped make here. And of course, one of those changes was that I had a straw poll up that said, should we go ahead and implement some of the suspensions that were made this coming season for the Pitt Panthers? And you guys overwhelmingly voted to go along with that because it would increase the challenge of our career mode, which is great because we had a very successful season last year, but we don't want to make it too successful every year, so we're going to make things a little bit tougher. And the big thing is we're losing a couple of players. We're losing 2 starters on the defensive line. We're going to go over that, and we'll have a couple players suspended in the one offensive player, and 2 more defensive starters are going to be suspended for at least 1 game for one of them, and 2 of them will be suspended for 3 games. So it'll be a big impact onto our team, of course, for this season. So those are going to be big things that we're going to talk about. And then, of course, the other thing that you're going to see here on the screen in just a minute was I said that 8 of our players, in order to make things a little bit more challenging, the NCAA progression is just so easy that we decided that 8 of the players on our team are going to be randomly selected and are going to lose some overall points. And so the way we did that is I random number generated 1 to 99 and got 8 players, and then I random number generated 1 to 8, and they could lose as many as 8 points in their rating. And then I had 2 players that I random number generated to pick, and they could randomly earn up to 5 points in an overall increase, 1 to 5. So it's an additional boost that said, they had a great training camp. They really came out of nowhere. And so on the screen, you're going to see the 8 players that we ended up downgrading. Thomas McVitie, who was projected to come in as our starting quarterback at 82 overall, he had a downgrade of 2 overall points, which puts him at 80 overall, which makes it a bit more of a quarterback competition for us. George Aston, our stud fullback, lost 1 overall point. Chris Clark, our new starting tight end, who I actually had on the roster last year, but because he was redshirting for the Panthers, I just basically left him off of the team. He now comes in as our starter, but he loses 5 overall points. He got absolutely crushed, which is probably fair because I think I brought him in with maybe a bit of a too high overall anyway, so he loses 5 overall points. Our starting center, Alex Officer, loses 3 overall points. Starting middle linebacker, Quentin Virginis, loses 2 overall points. Jay Stalker, who was potentially in the mix for starting free safety, but he loses 2 overall points. Starting punter Ryan Winslow, or I should say our only punter, he loses 1 overall point. And basically bottom of the depth chart, wide receiver Araujo Lopez loses 7 overall points. So he gets hit the hardest by the decrease, but he's probably the player that it's least important to impact of the guys that got selected. And then for increases, tight end Matt Flanagan gets a 2 overall bump. So he goes up 2 more overall points, which is going to put him in a good competition with Clark. And then Barry Jenkins II, a freshman. I let the freshmen stay away from the downgrades, but I put them into the mix for upgrades. And Barry Jenkins, outside linebacker who came in, got a 4 overall point boost before even playing a game for us. So he had an unbelievable camp. It still doesn't put him with enough overall to make him an outright starter, but it definitely puts him with a good enough overall that he's going to be in the mix for snaps, no doubt about that. So some big points as far as the swing of things went. So we are going to now go through who are we redshirting, what are we looking at on our depth chart, and then we're going to talk about overall how does that make our team look compared to last year. Have we improved? Have we gotten worse? And so on and so forth. So first things first, if we come in here and we take a look at our redshirted players, we can see that overall, I'm just going to sort right to the bottom. We're going to just scroll down through the team. You can pause, obviously, and see everybody's overall if you want to do so. But the players that we're going to redshirt okay, are going to be farther down here. So a lot of our freshmen, we'll actually sort them by year. I think that'll be the best way to look at them. We can see there's all the seniors that we have, so a decent number. A bunch of juniors, obviously, of course, we'll scroll on through. We're obviously not going to redshirt any of the juniors, any of the sophomores, things of that nature. None of them are going to be redshirt. But as we get down to the freshmen, we have a few redshirt freshmen who obviously can't be redshirted again. But then we get into most of the guys who were signed this offseason. So Robert Brown, right guard, of course, is going to be redshirted. Caleb Cannon, tight end, is going to be redshirted. Ryan Lumpkin is going to be redshirted. Phil Moore is going to be redshirted. Quell Hampshire, the free safety, is going to be redshirted. Obviously, these guys could lose their redshirt at any time if I decide I want to play them, but it's more just to make sure so as we get into future seasons here, season 2, season 3, or season 3, season 4, and so on and so forth, they'll actually get some playing time. Ryan Henry, left tackle, gets redshirted. Todd Sibley, halfback, 74 overall, very good player, is getting redshirted. Same with Kai Weems, 74 overall, is getting redshirted because of the fact that I want them to save their eligibility for future and potentially become starters down the road. Jacob Laughlin, 75 overall, strong safety, redshirted as well. Osi Obasahan, right outside linebacker, getting redshirted. Now, the freshmen that will definitely be seeing playing time, like I said, anybody who was a 4-star or better will not get redshirted, and there are a few players that were less than 4 stars that won't get redshirted either because of the fact that I need them. So Jay Bump, of course, is going to be our kicker. Kaiser Artis Scott, cornerback, won't be redshirted. Jay Menifee, middle linebacker, won't be redshirted. He came in as a 4-star. Same with Darren Toth, defensive tackle, who's going to play a bigger role now. We'll see that in just a minute. Barry Jenkins, of course. Sam Smoot is our backup fullback. We need him, so we're not going to redshirt him. And Bandino Mo is not getting redshirted. Same with Jason Jordan, outside linebacker, and Cam Porter, left guard, as well as Sean Wolfgang, left end. So none of those guys are being redshirted, as well as, of course, Paris Ford, our gem recruit that we were able to bring in, 5-star player who's going to be fantastic for us. Actually, I think he was a 4-star, but either way, came in as a fantastic player for us. So without further ado, those are the guys that are getting redshirted. So that's going to lead us into our depth chart. So, of course, the big position to take a look at, we lost our starting quarterback, Nathan Peterman, to the NFL draft. He went to the Buffalo Bills. And so that means we're left with some young guys, okay? We're not as benefited as the Pitt Panthers in real life to bring in a graduate transfer. We didn't get any quarterbacks that wanted to come play for us. So we're going to have to use what we've got in the cupboard already, which that's Thomas McVitie, who was 82 overall. He's now down to 80. Ben DiNucci, 79 overall. So we got two players that are basically right next to each other in terms of overall. So it's going to be fantastic. We're actually going to have, the way I'm looking at, our first game, we saw that in the last episode, is against Rice. And so because of that, it's, you don't want to count your chickens too early, but it should be a relatively easy game. We're going to give both quarterbacks time to play. We're going to get a quarterback competition going, and somebody's going to earn the job in that Rice matchup before we head away to Penn State and then Oklahoma State at home, our two toughest games on our non-conference schedule. Bandino Mo, the reason he's not getting redshirted, we need a third-string quarterback, and so he's going to be that guy for us. Halfback, of course, Quadri Olson is fantastic, 92 overall with his upgrades in the offseason. Shantez Moss and Darren Hall, both 85 overall, so they're going to compete for secondary playing time. We'll try and get them both some snaps. And then Maurice French is going to be our fourth-string halfback because he is, a receiver, but he's got good speed. He's a good runner of the ball. And you can see Quadri Olson coming off a season. If we take a look at him, 471 yards last season, so nothing to snuff at. 3 touchdowns on his back as well. So he was a good player last year, obviously behind James Conner, who's gone to the NFL to the Pittsburgh Steelers. So this is going to be Olson's time to shine. Shantez Moss and Darren Hall definitely going to get a little bit of play. Our quarterbacks, McVitie and DiNucci, you can see McVitie didn't even play last year. DiNucci came in, only threw 2 passes. Neither of them were completed, so nothing going on for him. So both players, very, very limited experience, so we're going to see how things go for them. Of course, our starting fullback is George Aston. Freshman Sam Smoot's behind him, but Aston is our jack of all trades. Ran for 200 yards and 5 touchdowns last year. Caught 3 touchdowns and 20 passes last year, so he can do it all. He's a stud for us, and we're looking forward to seeing him continue to progress and be a factor in the offense. Jester Weah got an unbelievable upgrade. He got like an 8-point upgrade over the offseason, which is just ridiculous. So he's up to 92 overall. Last season for us, he averaged 23 yards a catch with 10 receiving touchdowns. So we're going to look for a ton from him. And then, of course, our other jack of all trades, All-American last season, Quadri Henderson. 47 catches, 3 touchdowns last season, receiving Rushing the ball, he ran for 692 yards, which was unbelievable, and he had 7 rushing touchdowns. And then, of course, he was the best returner in the NCAA with 4 kick return touchdowns. So he was unbelievable for us. We're looking to return that from him. Aaron Matthews is going to get to the 3rd receiver position. I thought he was very solid last season. 12 catches and a touchdown. He was another big play threat. Maurice French is going to get a chance to play. Trey Tipton, unfortunately, didn't really progress in the offseason, which means Ruben Flowers, who redshirted last year, is going to get an opportunity to get some snaps, though I would expect us to see all 6 of these receivers at some point. Tight ends wise, Chris Clark, of course, is going to be his first season with us. 83 overall, didn't play last year. Lost 5 overall, unfortunately, and that gives Matt Flanagan a chance to progress here. 80 overall, redshirt senior, maybe going to get a chance to play there. And, of course, George Aston will be the 3rd fullback if we ever do need one. Offensive line should be very, very solid. Brian O'Neill at left tackle, 90 overall. We've actually moved him from right tackle to left tackle with the loss of Biznawadi. We'll put O'Neill on the strong side there. Freshman Brandon Ford is going to back him up. Brandon Hodges, transfer from Texas, is going to be our starting left guard this season, 82 overall. But if he struggles or gets hurt, we do have a freshman Cam Porter waiting in the wings to jump into duty if we need him to, who's not too shabby himself. At center, of course, Alex Officer, who did lose 3 overall points, but still a very solid 87 overall, backed up by junior Connor Dentino. Right guard Alex Buxer, 90 overall, is going to be hopefully an All-American, All-ACC for us. 90 overall is backed up by Mike Herndon. Alex Buxer is one of the players we will be losing, though. He's going to have a 1-game suspension, much like he did in real life. So he's going to sit out our game against Rice, unfortunately, but he will be back for the big Penn State-Oklahoma State contest. At right tackle, Jared Jones-Smith gets to step into the limelight. Only 84 overall, but hopefully he will play well for us. He's backed up by sophomore Tony Pilato. This Alan Edwards guy, I will point him out to you guys. I haven't adjusted him yet. When we get to our defensive ends, Alan Edwards is a defensive end in real life, and I want to convert him, so I'm going to change his attributes. So it's going to say his overall is actually really bad, when in reality, he'll have good statistics for defensive end. I'm not going to make him a superstar. He's going to be like a 77, 78, somewhere in there, which is no better than any of the other guys we have on our roster. But we will be moving him over, so I want to make you guys aware of that. So if you see him making plays at right end, you're not like, who is this guy? Now we get to the defensive side of the ball. Dwayne Hendricks will be starting at left end. 85 overall, should be fantastic. Obviously, he was a 2nd string last year behind Juan Price and Rory Blair. He's had great progression in the offseason, so we're looking for big things out of him. Sean Wolfgang will be backing him up. Freshman, we should expect to see some playing time out of him. Why? Because at right end is where we're losing an All-American from last year, a guy that had 12 sacks. I think he led the nation in sacks. Dismissed from the team. That was one of the 2 guys that I said was going to be dismissed from the team, and that was Rory Blair. So James Folston right now is slated to start. Kazon Pugh and Sean Wolfgang may see time over here as well. And there's our boy Rory Blair. Was an All-American last year. We look at his statistics: 12 sacks, 21 tackles for a loss, 34 tackles overall. Was just an absolute monster for us. Was coming into his senior year and was dismissed from the team. So it's a huge blow for us to lose him. Hopefully Hendricks can be a big pass rusher for us. He did have 1 sack last year, and Folston was actually really good last year in my opinion. 1 sack. He had a fumble that he took to almost to the house in the Clemson victory last year. So hopefully he can play a role for us as well. But losing Rory Blair is huge. And the other place we have a loss is at defensive tackle. So Keyshawn Camp is going to jump into the starter role. We lost Tyreek Jarrett, who was a starter. We lost Shakir Soto. We lost both of our starting defensive tackles, and our super sub defensive tackle, who was our 2nd string last year, was going to be our top defensive tackle, Jeremiah Taleni. 2 sacks himself last year. He also was dismissed from the team, which means the young guys are going to have to step up. Sophomore Keyshawn Camp, sophomore Amir Watts are going to be our starters, and freshman Darren Toth, who was going to be, in the mix already, but he's going to have to step into things as well. And he's a huge player, 6'5", 310, so expect to see him in the lineup sooner rather than later. Sean Wolfgang and James Folston may see time at defensive tackle as well, just because they have, the ability to potentially play a role there for us on the defensive line. Outside linebacker Elijah Zeese will be the starter, backed up by Sean Idowu, with our boy Barry Jenkins getting some time as well. Remember, he went up 4 overall points in the offseason, so he's up to 80 overall behind the juniors here, so he may play a role, again, sooner rather than later, depending on how our defense goes. At middle linebacker, with Quentin Wirginis starting here, but he will be missing the first game of the season, unfortunately, or the first 3 games, excuse me, due to suspension. So Quentin Wirginis will miss the game against Rice, he'll miss the Penn State game, and he'll miss the Oklahoma State game, which means we'll have to do some shifting of the linebackers around to fill that position, because I don't think freshmen Chase Pine or Jay Menifee are ready to fit that starter's role just yet. So more than likely, we'll see someone like Brightwell, who's our starting right outside linebacker. We'll see like Salim Brightwell end up moving to the middle linebacker position, and then the likes of either Sean Idowu or Barry Jenkins jumping into the starting right outside linebacker position for the first 3 games. I would expect it to be Idowu, but we'll wait and see. So Brightwell, you're starting right outside linebacker, though we should see him in the middle as well, backed up by freshman Jason Jordan. So you can see the youth movement is really in effect here. We got a lot of young players in the lineup. At corner, senior captain Avonte Max. We're looking for great things out of him. Of course, 7 interceptions last year. We weren't great against the pass, that's true, but hopefully with some progression this year, Max will be very solid, and we got some young guys looking to play a role. So Dane Jackson is going to be our starting outside corner, because DeMar Hamlin was a freshman All-American playing in the slot. 46 tackles, 9 for a loss, 4 sacks, and a pick. He also forced 2 fumbles, 5 deflected passes. Was unbelievable. Dane Jackson was solid in his own right. Deflected a pass, 2.5 sacks, 38 tackles. So they're going to be interchangeable as kind of the second and third nickel corners. And Kaiser Artis-Scott, a freshman, just came in this year, is going to be our dime corner. He's in that role potentially with Philip Motley. If we see Artis-Scott getting burned too much, Motley may get some time as well, but Artis-Scott is going to get a role at cornerback. So if you're the guy that submitted Artis-Scott, get excited. At free safety, we got a freshman in the starting lineup, Paris Ford, though he will be spelled by Jay Stalker, pretty evenly. I think we're going to see both of them get a decent amount of playing time. But Paris Ford, freshman, our biggest recruit, a hometown guy. He's from Pittsburgh, and we're expecting to see him start at field safety right away, much like Jordan Whitehead did a couple years ago. Jay Stalker will be his backup, though, and Artis-Scott has the ability to play safety, so we may see him as kind of a depth player there as well. Of course, at strong safety, this is where All-American Jordan Whitehead is going to have to be huge for us. He won the Thorpe Award last year, 92 tackles, 19 for a loss, 4 sacks, had a pick, 2 forced fumbles, 4 pass deflections. He does it all, and we need to see a big season out of him, though Jordan Whitehead is our third guy who will be suspended. He will be missing the first 3 games of the season for disciplinary reasons. So he's going to miss the Rice game. He's going to miss the Penn State game, which was where we may arguably miss him the most. And then he's going to miss the Oklahoma State game. So we're going to be relying on Dennis Briggs starting at strong safety for those 3 games. Obviously, a player that we hope can do the role. He's a very good player, but, losing a player of Jordan Whitehead's caliber is going to be just a heartbreaker for us. And, of course, Teran Coleman's going to be the depth corner or safety for that game. Kicker, we do have a freshman, Jay Bump, coming in, so hopefully he can be a clutch player and keep his nerves. Not a ton of power, but a very accurate player. Punter, of course, is Ryan Winslow. Very solid player. Expect him to have a good year. And, of course, in the kick return game, Quadri Henderson is that guy. All-American, first-team All-American returner last season, so hopefully he can do the role for us again. Winslow will be taking kickoffs for us, and Carantino will handle long snapping for this season. So the big thing to see is how will the defense shake out, of course, with the loss of so many good players and suspensions, and how will the Panthers cope in their backfield? They lose James Conner, but Olsen should fill that role. But with no Nathan Peterman, can McVitie or DiNucci win the starting job and perform well for the Panthers? That's going to be the big key. So with that in mind, take a look on the screen here as we go over kind of how things have progressed going into next season. What is our, overall starting level of player in comparison to last year? So I averaged these out by position. So at quarterback, of course, we had Nate Peterman who's an 87. Now at best we have McVitie or DiNucci, so 80. So obviously a significant downgrade at quarterback. In the backfield, I put the halfback and fullback together. So last year, the average of Connor and George Ashton was 91 overall. 92 overall with the average of Olesen and George Aston. So actually, it's more of Aston's upgrade that's caused things to go up, because Connor was rated higher than Olesen is, but of course the George Aston factor makes the key there. At receiver, of course, we are way better. You have the likes of Jester Wea and Henderson last year, 84 and 83 overall respectively. Now they are at 92 and 88 overall, so we have a 90 overall wide receiver duo. We're going the starters, of course. Tight end, we had an 85 of Scott Orndorff last year, 83 of Chris Clark this year, so it's a little bit of a downgrade. Offensive line, between our 5 offensive linemen, we had an 86.6 overall average. That was kind of pinpointed by Biznawadi at 91, Dorian Johnson at 88. This year, we have the likes of Brian O'Neill at 90. Okay, we got the likes of Alex Officer at 87, Bookser at 90, so some high-rated players there to offset a couple of lower starters in Hodges and Jared Jones-Smith. Defensive line, of course, we see a pretty big downgrade there, so our pass rush is going to be huge for us. We went from 84.25 average with Juan Price leading the line at a 90, now to an 81, so it's going to be very tough in that regard. Linebackers were about the same, 83 average last season versus an 83 and a third average this year. Defensive backs, we see actually a significant upgrade. Avonte Max has gotten better. A couple of our young guys have gotten better, so hopefully that will bode to a better pass defense this year. So 86 overall average versus, of course, Jordan White had 94, brings that average up quite a bit versus 81.5 last year. And then in our kicking game, 84.5 versus 84.5, so it should be very similar and reliable again this year. So obviously you can see increases for the most part across the board, but that big decrease in in quarterback could play a factor in how our offense goes. And of course, the big decrease in the defensive line could be a big factor in our defense, because if we can't get pressure on the quarterback, again, it's not going to help in the passing defensive game. So let me know in the comments, guys, how you think the team looks. Let me know based on this team, based on the schedule we've gone over, how you think we're going to fare this year. And we'll, I look forward to seeing your comments that I can respond to. And next episode is going to be an NCAA preview. So I will try to not be as long-winded as I was in this episode, but it'll be an NCAA preview where we're going to go over, top 25 coming into this year, projections for the ACC conference, projections for, national championship potentially, and things of that nature before we then get into our first game of the season. So, as always, guys, thank you so much for watching. Really appreciate all the following. I want to hear your comments. Let me know what you think of the depth chart. Who should be our starting quarterback? That's kind of the big number for us right now. So let me know who should be starting in the Rice game, and we will see you guys in the next episode. And take care. We'll see you soon. Hail to Pitt. Bye-bye.